You're very welcome to another vlog, and this time around I was hoping I could greet you with welcome to Yosemite National Park in California. But unfortunately, due to, you might actually see it, an eye injury, I cut my cornea in the garden with a bramble. I had to cancel literally the day before we flew out. Now, luckily enough, thanks to the ease by which you can rebook a flight just a few hours before it flies, hotels, tours, etc. We've rebooked that trip to October of this year. So I haven't been out in quite a while, and I thought I'd just get out this morning. It's about 6 o'clock. As you can see, it's quite misty and a little bit of rain here at the Sally Gap in County Wicklow. And this morning will just be about getting back familiar with landscape photography and just being out in the great outdoors. Now, I do have a new toy to play with this morning, and I'm doing just that at the moment. It's the Nikon 100 to 400. I think it's an f4.5 to f5.6 or so lens, and I used it a few weeks ago on a very short trip to the Paris Court waterfall. I was really impressed with the lens's ease of use, with the sharpness, but more so with the beautiful colour contrast. I noticed that straight on the back of the camera, that there was just a little special quality about the lens, and I have it back on the camera this morning. So maybe I'll just pan the camera around, and actually you can hardly see anything in the back of the screen there because the mist has enveloped what I am looking at there, which is a pine tree on the cliff face here at Lough. One of the uses to which I want to put this lens to is to try to capture the unique landscape of the Sally Gap upland heath area in Wicklow. There's no dominant peaks here on the Sally Gap. It's rolling hills, and when you get a little bit of fog, and maybe I'll be blessed with a little bit of good light later this morning, to separate those layers. So I think this lens at 300 or 400 millimeters may be good at capturing the layers of the Sally Gap and the atmosphere of this wonderful landscape, which is so open. It also has an airy feeling about it from time to time, particularly on days like this. Well, driving along the Sally Gap this morning, the fog really came down thick and heavy, and the landscape disappeared. So I didn't have an opportunity to explore those layers that you get up here of the hills into the distance. So I've arrived at a copse of Scots pine trees, and there are distant views over plantations here to the right of me. Very few of the tips of the trees here are visible at the moment. Maybe if that fog lifts a little bit, we may get some interesting abstract images in that direction. But for now, it's the tree. I think we have a larch and 2 Scots pine between us, but the trio of trees makes a pleasing enough image, quite two-dimensional. There's no depth. I attempted to include some of the heather, which isn't quite in flower yet, in the foreground, but it's very dark. compared to the grasses, which are still faded from last year's growth. But it's the fog that makes this an image, simply because any type of fog and trees reduces the complexity of the scene, reduces the chaos of the leaves and the twigs and the branches that are not your primary subject. So the trees behind me, therefore, are quite distinct. Without that fog, they would more easily blend into the many trees in the background. So I've remained in the area where the tree Scots pine or the larch and the two Scots pine were in mist. And just as I finished up filming, the mist lifted and I took another photograph of the trees without the mist. And it'll be interesting to compare the two. And just to illustrate the point that I had made, that's quite obvious with regards to how fog and mist simplifies and accentuates a woodland scene. So as you see behind me, I have those layers of landscape that I had mentioned, and it's a lovely scene. We've layers of coniferous plantation, quite light coloured in the foreground, a little bit darker again, another layer of heathland, and a distant layer, very faded, of heathland hills on the Sally Gap. Moving on around the Sally Gap, another location that doesn't lend itself to a wider shot or even a mid-range shot. So I'm focused into 400mm and just one of the segments of the waterfall, I think the upper third, with the waterfall entering the frame in the centre of the frame, portrait orientation, and exiting the frame with a nice little flow on the bottom left-hand side. So a very simple shot, a little bit of dodging and burning of that may result in a pleasing enough image. Regards to shutter speed, I was going for a shorter shutter speed, 40 to 60 to 100 of a second, to try to freeze that water. As I thought that shooting a slower shutter speed, 6 to third, 1 second even, would blur the water too much. But it actually works on this scene. So I'll put that one up there on the screen now. There's a cyclist gone by, and actually the traffic has come out. It's about 9 o'clock now. I've been out about 3 hours or so. We'll move on to the next location. We might actually do a little bit of woodland photography today. Sure, why not? Well, I've made my way to a beach woodland with a beautiful river flowing through it. And I've looked for a composition amongst the beech trees with those lime green, fresh leaves out. They look stunning. Some of them are just drooped over. They haven't fully opened up yet. So I took 1 or 2 images, but I'm not going to put any of them up because they're just not, they're not good compositions. I also came across a very small bloom of bluebells on the woodland floor. But similarly, apart from a little bit of fallen wood with moss on it, I really couldn't find a composition to use those bluebells. Now, surprisingly, as I've wandered down onto the riverbank here, the fresh growth on the far bank and its reflection into the water has kind of captured my imagination. And initially I tried to take compositions using the reflections, using both sides, the actual trees and the reflections of the trees in the water. But I found myself zooming in to just the reflections in the water and the little pieces of white oxygenated water. And the river here is a very deep copper colour beneath the stones, and it's renowned for that. And this river flows from Laragh down through Rathdrum, and really is beautiful. It's a very dark looking river, so it gives fantastic reflections. Well, it's the latter part of the day now, and I've moved on up into the fresh leaves on the larger oaks just above the upper lake in Glendalough. And I'm on a height in the canopy, if you will, of some of these larger oak trees. And I have the 24 to 120 on, and just trying to pick out little abstracts, branches and leaves, and finding patterns and harmony amongst them. Now, it really is that time of the year. The midges are out. I can't believe it because it's quite cool earlier on. But they're out in force. That's the reason I have the hat on. It's nothing to do with the temperature. Now, there was fog here earlier on, but that fog has dissipated. But it's an area I haven't walked through before with photography in mind. I've walked the Spink here, but to spend some time here, to pause, to slow down, and to notice the patterns in the trees and the trees themselves. It certainly put it in my mind to revisit here maybe later in the year when it cools down again, the colours turn. But I think I'm going to leave the vlog there for now, and I hope you've enjoyed the vlog, which started off as an exploration of the 100 to 400 lens and trying to capture those layers in the Sally Gap. And it's turned into something very different, back into woodland, which I find myself more and more drawn to. But I think the next outing is definitely not going to be woodland. It'll be a seascape or a wildlife trip. So if you've enjoyed the content, please subscribe and drop me a comment. And until next time, thanks very much for watching.